I'm Greg Walcher. When I headed the Colorado Department of Natural Resources, it was during a difficult time for forestry in Colorado. In fact, the worst fire year in the history of Colorado in 2002. We had literally burning at the same time the 4 worst wildfires in the history of the state. And it forced a great kind of refocusing of attention on forest management that is desperately needed around this country, where we have a swath of dead trees from New Mexico to British Columbia because of bad forest management. And a lot of people, frankly, look at what's going on with these giant catastrophic wildfires and assume that it's natural and say we ought to let nature take its course. But of course, there isn't anything natural about it. What has happened over the years is this. The original role of forestry in nature was at a fairly delicate balance. Lightning will strike a natural fire every 5 years or something like that. Generally burn out all the grasses and little seedlings and so on, but mostly leave the big trees alone and burn at a fairly low intensity, and that kept the forests in the right level of density in a fairly healthy condition. Once people started settling the West, they essentially needed the wood for mine timbers and railroad ties and housing and so on, and so they began to put out all forest fires everywhere. And for 100 years it was the primary function of the Forest Service to stop forest fires. And yet the forest still didn't grow to a terribly overgrown, dense condition, because the role of fire was replaced with a steady program of thinning and logging over the years that performed essentially the same function. Then logging became unpopular with the public a generation or so ago, and has all but been stopped by the U.S. Forest Service, and we have replaced that with nothing. So what we have now essentially is no management at all, a kind of a wall built around the forest where nothing manages the trees, because there are a group of people with kind of a mindset that assumes we can preserve the forest forever like a snapshot without understanding that it's still growing. You can't, all living organisms, including trees, grow and then die. And if you don't do something different with the Forest Service, we're watching literally the death and destruction of all of the national forests in this country. The U.S. Forest Service itself today says that more than 60% of all the trees in America are dead or dying or diseased or at risk of catastrophic wildfires. And it's just because of the lack of management. So we have to take a different approach, or our generation is in serious danger of squandering the greatest legacy of the conservation movement, which is our national forests.